Let us begin. Alrighty. BC 376. At the return of spring, Aegislaus lay sick, a bedridden invalid. The history of the case is this: during the withdrawal of his army from Thebes the year before, when at Megara, Aphrodisian, while mounting from the Aphrodisian to the government house, he ruptured a vein or other vessel of the body. This was followed by a rush of blood to his sound leg. The knee was much swelled and the pain intolerable until a Syracusan surgeon made an incision in the vein near the ankle. The blood thus let flowed night and day, and do what they could to stop the discharge, all failed till the patient fainted away. Then it ceased. In this plight, Aegislaus was conveyed home on a litter to Lacedaemon, and remained an invalid the rest of that summer and throughout the winter. But to resume, at the first burst of spring, the Lacedaemonians again called out the ban and gave orders to Cleombrotus to lead the expedition. The king found himself presently with his troops at the foot of Cithaeron, and his light infantry advanced to occupy the pass which commands the road. But here they found a detachment of Thebans and Athenians already in occupation of the desired height, who for a while suffered them to approach, but when they were close upon them, sprang from their position and charged, putting about 40 to the sword. This incident was sufficient to convince Cleombrotus that to invade Thebes by this mountain passage was out of the question, and in this faith he led back and disbanded his troops. The allies met in Lacedaemon, and arguments were adduced on the part of the allies to show the faint-heartedness would very soon lead to their being absolutely worn out by the war. They had got it in their power, it was urged, to fill out a fleet far outnumbering that of Athens, and to reduce that city by starvation it was open to them in the self same ships to carry an army across into Theban territory, and they had a choice of routes: the road into Phocis, or, if they preferred, by Crucis. After thus carefully considering the matter, they manned a fleet of 60 triremes, and Paulus was appointed admiral in command. Nor indeed were their expectations altogether bellied. The Athenians were soon so closely blockaded that their corn vessels could get no farther than Gerestus. There was no inducing them to coast down farther south, with the Lacedaemonian navy hovering about Aegina and Chios and Andros. The Athenians, making a virtue of necessity, manned their ships in person, gave battle to Poly under the leadership of Cabrius, and came out of the sea fight victorious. BC 375. Then the corn supplies flowed freely into Athens. The Lacedaemonians on their side were preparing to transport an army across the water into Boeotia, when the Thebans sent a request to the Athenians urging them to dispatch an armament round Peloponnesus, under the persuasion that if this were done, the Lacedaemonians would find it impossible at once to guard their own or the allied territory in that part of the world, and at the same time to convey an army of any size to operate against Thebes. The proposals fell in with the present temper of the Athenians, irritated with Lacedaemon on account of the exploit of Spodrius. Accordingly, they eagerly manned a fleet of 60 vessels, appointing Timotheus as admiral in command, and dispatched it on a cruise around Peloponnesus. The Thebans, seeing that there had been no hostile invasion of their territory for so long, neither during the voyage of Cleombrotus nor now, whilst Timotheus prosecuted his coasting voyage, felt emboldened to carry out a campaign on their own account against the provincial cities, and one by one they again recovered them. Timotheus and his crews reached Corcyra and reduced it at a blow. That done, he neither enslaved the inhabitants nor drove them into exile, nor changed their laws. And of this conduct he reaped the benefit of the increased cordiality of all the cities of those parts. The Lacedaemonians thereupon fitted out and dispatched a counterfleet, with Nico Locus in command, an officer of consummate boldness. This admiral no sooner caught sight of Timotheus' fleet than without hesitation, and in spite of the absence of 6 Ambraciot vessels which formed part of his squadron, he gave battle, with 55 ships to the enemy's 60. The result was a defeat at the moment, and Timotheus set up a trophy at Eliza. But as soon as the 6 missing Ambraciot vessels had reinforced him, the ships of Timotheus, meanwhile, being docked and undergoing repairs, he bore down upon Elysia in search of the Athenian, and as Timotheus refused to put out to meet him, the Lacedaemonians in turn set up a trophy on the nearest group of islands. BC 374. Timotheus, after repairing his original squadron and many more vessels from Corcyra, found himself at the head of more than 70 ships. His naval superiority was undisputed, but he was forced to send to Athens for moneys, seeing his fleet was large and his wants not trifling. Book 6, BC 374. The Athenians and Lacedaemonians were thus engaged, but to return to the Thebans after the subjugation of the cities in Boeotia, they extended the area of aggression and marched into Phocis. The Phocians, on their side, sent an embassy to Lacedaemon and pleaded that without assistance from that power they must inevitably yield to Thebes. The Lacedaemonians, in response, conveyed by sea into the territory of Phocis their king, Cleombrotus, at the head of 4 regiments and the contingents of the allies. About the same time, Polydamas of Pharsalus arrived from Thessaly to address the General Assembly of Lacedaemon. He was a man of high repute throughout the whole of Thessaly. While in his native city, he was regarded as so true a gentleman that the faction-ridden Pharsalians were content to entrust the citadel to his keeping and to allow their revenues to pass through his hands. It was his privilege to disperse the money needed for sacred rites or other expenditure within the limits of their written law and constitution. Out of these moneys, this faithful steward of the state was able to garrison and guard in safety for the citizens their capital. Every year he rendered an account of his administration in general. If there was a deficit, he made it up out of his own pocket, and when the revenues expanded, he paid himself back. For the rest, his hospitality to foreigners and his magnificence were a true Thessalian scale. Such was the style and character of a man who now arrived in Lacedaemon and spoke as follows. Men of Lacedaemon, it is my capacity as Proxenus and benefactor, titles borne by my ancestry from time immemorial, that I claim, or rather am bound, in case of any difficulty, to come to you, and in case of any complications dangerous to your interest in Thessaly, to give you warning. The name of Jason, I feel sure, is not unknown to Lacedaemonian ears. His power as a prince is sufficiently large, and his fame widespread. It is of Jason I have to speak. Under cover of a treaty of a peace he has lately conferred with me, and this is the substance of what he urged Polydamas, he said. If I chose, I could lay your city at my feet, even against its will, as the following considerations will prove to you. See, he went on, the majority and the most important of the states of Thessaly are my allies. I subdued them in campaigns in which you took their side in opposition to myself. Again, you do not need to be told that I have 6,000 mercenaries who are a match in themselves, I take it, for any single state. It is not the mere numbers on which I insist. No doubt as large an army could be raised in other quarters, but These citizen armies have this defect. They include men who are already advanced in years, with others whose beards are scarcely grown. Again, it is only a fraction of the citizens who attend to bodily training in a state, whereas with me, no one takes mercenary service who is not as capable of endurance as myself. And here, Lacedaemonians, I must tell you what is the bare truth. This Jason is a stout man of limb and robust of today, with an insatiable appetite for toil. Equally true is that he tests the mettle of those with him day by day. He is always at their head, whether on a field day under arms, or in the gymnasium, or on some military expedition. The weak members of the corps he weeds out, but those whom he sees bear themselves stout-heartedly in the face of war, like true lovers of danger and of toil. He honors with double, treble, or quadruple pay, or with other gifts. On the bed of sickness they will not lack attendants, nor honor in their graves. Thus, every foreigner in his service knows that his valor in war may obtain for him a livelihood, a life replete at once with honor and abundance. Then, with some parade, he pointed out to me what I knew before, the Martians and the Dolopians. Then, with some parade, he pointed out to me what I knew before, that the Maratians and the Dolopians and Alcides, the Hyparch and Epirus were already subject to his sway, so that I may fairly ask you, Polydamas, he proceeded, what I have to apprehend, that I should not look on your future subjugation as mere child's play. Perhaps someone who did not know me and what manner of man I am might put it to me. Well, Jason, if all you say be true, why do you hesitate? Why do you not march at once against Pharsalia? For the good reason, I reply, that it suits me better to win you voluntarily than to annex you against your wills. Since if you are forced, you will always be planning all the mischief you can against me. And if, and I, on my side, shall be striving to diminish your power. Whereas if you throw in your lot with mine trustfully and willingly, it is certain we shall do what we can to help each other. I see and know, Polydamas, that your country fixes her eyes on one man only, and that is yourself. What I guarantee you, therefore, is that if you will dispose her lovingly to myself, I on my side will raise you up to be the greatest man in Hellas next to me. Listen, while I tell you what is not, in which I offer you the second prize. Listen and accept nothing which does not approve itself as true to your own reasoning. First, it is not plain to us both that with the adhesion of Pharsalus and the swarm of pettier states dependent on yourselves, I shall with infinite ease become Tagos of all the Thessalians, and then the corollary Thessaly so united, 16,000 cavalry and more than 10,000 heavy infantry leap into life. Indeed, when I contemplate physique and proud carriage of these men, I cannot but persuade myself that with proper handling, there is not a nation or tribe of men to which Thessalians would deign to yield submission. Look at the broad expanse of Thessaly and consider, when once a Tagus is established here, all the tribes in a circle round will lie stilled in subjection, and almost every member of these tribes is an archer born, so that in the light infantry division of our service, our power must needs excel. Furthermore, the Boeotians and all the rest of the world in arms against Lacedaemon are my allies. They clamor to follow my banner, if only I will free them from Sparta's yoke. So again, the Athenians, I make sure, will do all they can to gain our alliance. But with them I do not think we will make friends, for my persuasion is that the empire by sea will be even easier to acquire empire by land. And to show you the justice of this reasoning, I would have you weigh the following considerations. With Macedonia, which is the timber yard of the Athenian navy, in our hands, we shall be able to construct a far larger fleet than theirs. That stands to reason. And as to men, which will be the better able to man vessels, think you, Athens or ourselves, with our stalwart and numerous penestae, which will better support mariners, a nation which, like our own, out of her abundance exports her corn to foreign parts, or Athens, which, but for foreign pur- but for foreign purchases, has not enough to support herself. And so, as to wealth in general, it is only natural, is it not, that we, who do not look to a string of little islands for supplies, but rather, but gather, but, 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 but gather the fruits of continental peoples, should find our resources more copious. As soon as the scattered powers of Thessaly are gathered into a principality, all the tribes around, I repeat, will become our tributaries. I need not tell you that the king of Persia reaps the fruits not of islands, but a but of a continent, and he is the wealthiest of men. But the reduction of Persia will still be more practical. I imagine then that of Hellas, for there are men, save one, are better versed in slavery than in prowess. Nor have I forgotten, during the advance of Cyrus and afterwards, under Aegislaus, how scant the force was before which the Persians quailed. Least as uncontrolled as that of his brother, sovereign beyond the Cambonian hills. Even Jason seems to have been looked upon as a tyrant, possibly like the Athenian Demos. He himself did not refuse the name. Such Lacedaemonians were the glowing arguments of Jason. In answer, I told him that what he urged was well worth weighing, but that we, the friends of Lacedaemon, should so, without a quarrel, desert her and rush into the arms of her opponents seemed to me sheer madness. Whereat he praised me and said that now must he needs cling all the closer to me if that were my disposition, and so charged me to come to you and tell you the plain truth, which is that he is minded to march against Pharsalus if we will not hearken to him. Accordingly, he bade me demand assistance from you, and if they suffer you, he added, so to work upon them that they will send you a force sufficient to do battle with me. It is well, we will abide by war's arbitrament, not quarrel out with consequence, but if in your eyes that aid is insufficient, look to yourselves. How shall you longer be held blameless before that fatherland which honors you and in which you fare so well? These are the matters, Polydamas continued, which have brought me to Lacedaemon. I have told you the whole story. It is based partly on what I see to be the case, and partly on what I have heard from yonder man. My firm belief is, men of Lacedaemon, that if you are likely to dispatch force sufficient, not in my eyes only, but in the eyes of all the rest of Thessaly, to cope with Jason and more, the states will revolt from him. They are all in alarm as to the future development of the man's power. But if you think a company of newly enfranchised slaves and any amateur general will suffice, I advise you to rest in peace. You may take my word for it. You will have great power to contend against, and a man who is so prudent, a general, that in all he essays to do, be it in affair, secrecy, or speed or force, he is wont to hit the mark of his endeavors. One who is skilled, should occasion serve, to make the night of equal service to him that day, or if speed be needful, will labor on while breakfasting or taking an evening meal. And as for repose, he thinks that the time for it has come when the goal is reached or the business at hand is accomplished. And to this same practice he has habituated those around him. Right. Well, he knows how to regard the expectations of his soldiers when, by the extra toil which makes the difference, they have achieved success, so that in his school all have laid to heart that maxim, pain first and pleasure after, And in regard to pleasure of the senses of all men I know, he is the most continent, so that these also are powerless to make him idle at the expense of duty. You must consider the matter then, and tell me, as befits you, what you can and will do. Such were the representations of Polydamas. The Lacedaemonians, for the time being, deferred their answer, but after calculating the next day and the day following how many divisions they had on foreign service, and how many ships on the coast of Laconia to deal with the foreign squadron of the Athenians, and taking also into the account of war with their neighbors, they gave their answer to Polydamas. For the present, they would not be able to send him sufficient aid. Under the circumstances, they advised him to go back and make the best settlement he could of his own affairs and those of the city. He, thanking the Lacedaemonians for their straightforwardness, withdrew. Excuse me. The citadel of Pharsalus he begged Jason not to force him to give up. His desire was to preserve it for those who had entrusted it to his safekeeping. His own sons Jason was free to take his hostages, and he would do his best to procure for him the voluntary adhesion of his city, by persuasion and in every way to further his appointment as Tagus of Thessaly. Accordingly, after interchange of solemn assurances between the pair, the Pharsalians were let alone and in peace, and ere long Jason was, by general consent, appointed Tagus of all the Thessalians. Once fairly vested with that authority, he drew up a list of the cavalry and heavy infantry which the several states were capable of furnishing as their quota, with the result that his cavalry, inclusive of allies, numbered more than 8,000, while his infantry force was computed at not less than 20,000. And his light troops would have been a match for those of the whole world. The mere enumeration of the cities would be a labor in itself. His next act was a summons to all the dwellers round to pay tribute exactly the amount imposed in the days of Scopas. And here, in the state of accomplishment, we may leave these matters. I return to the point reached when this digression into the affairs of Jason began. Hardly, on the one hand, can a man become truly good, built foursquare in hands and feet, in mind, a work without a flaw. Do you know the poem from Jowett? But whether this Scopas is the Scopas of our text and a hero of Jason's is not clear.